basic dirt car build, I've mentioned that when you significantly lighten a front wheel drive car, most of the weight that you take off comes off the back. And so what you inadvertently do is you muck up the braking performance of the car. Because the car has got less weight in the back, what happens is it becomes taily under brakes. Most modern cars don't have brake proportioning valves. The manufacturers balance the front and the back brakes by the size of the components that they use, proportionate to the weight at the four corners of the car. And so when you take weight out the back brakes, if you like, in effect become too effective because the car is much lighter in the back than it was before. So you're going along on the dirt, racing, you put the brakes on and the car just goes whoop right around. So I want to show you and talk you through how to fix that. To demonstrate this, I'm going to use footage of me changing the brake system on a Honda that I built for a friend for dirt club racing about 18 months ago. I thought it would be easier to use that footage and update it here rather than hope by chance that one day you might accidentally or by sheer luck find that video in my playlist of over 150 videos. Every car is different, so where the braking components and the lines are on this Golf is different to where they'll be on whatever car you've got or on this Honda, but you'll get the idea of the principles that I'm talking about. The easiest time to do these sorts of changes, if you have the engine and gearbox out, is then, because you can get to the firewheel and all the braking lines quite easily. But you can do it without taking the motor and the gearbox out. It's just a little more fiddly. Before about 1960, cars had the back wheels and the front wheels joined, and you had a single master cylinder. And so you had the brake pedal on the single master cylinder operating all four wheels that were equally tied together. The problem with this system was that if you had a failure anywhere in the system, the whole system failed. And so then in about 1960 or so, the car manufacturers brought in dual circuit braking, and what they did was they linked the front wheels to a back wheel diagonally, and they put in two master cylinders. So that way, if one of the systems failed, the other one would still operate and pull the car up in a straight line. The problem with this system, which is in nearly every modern car today, as far as what I'm concerned about doing, is I want to put an adjuster to adjust the back brakes off, which will in effect put more pressure on the front. Change the weight there. That's heavier in there, that's lighter back there. This whole balance is out. Apart from any of that, on a circuit car or on a rally car, you want more braking in the front anyway. But I can't put a brake adjuster in this setup because you can't get a brake adjuster that's got two systems on it. And you can't put it in one wheel because it would just make the other wheel go crazy. And you can't have two separate adjusters because if you had one of them slightly different to the other one back wheel would break and lock and the other one wouldn't. So that would be dangerous. So what you have to do is I'm going to relink the front brakes together off one output out of the master cylinder. I'm going to relink the back brakes to the second master cylinder. I'm still going to have a dual circuit braking system, so if one system fails, the front or the back, the other one would still work. But doing it this way means that I can put a brake bias adjuster, which is really just a block-off valve that you adjust by hand, in the system right next to the driver. And that way we can adjust the braking on the back so that we're getting more and more of the braking going to the front and less going to the back, and we can get the balance right. And there's actually a difference in how you want it set for dirt and tar. On tar you actually want more brake on the front than even on the dirt. And what I've done in the past is once I get the settings right for dirt and tar, I just mark the knob, and if I'm running the car on either dirt or tar, I can just instantly adjust it. So what you need to do on your particular car is find the point at which you can swap the brake lines around. there'll be two places for this. One will be the master cylinder, and the other one will possibly be, if there's no other blocks where the lines go, you may have to do it at the ABS pump. So find where all the lines go in and trace them out and say, rightio, that line's going to that front wheel, that one's going there, they're the two back ones, and mark them, and then mark the block or the ABS pump where those lines are, and then that way you'll be able to figure out how to switch the lines around at that point. The other place you'll need to change your lines is at the master cylinder, but that's fairly straightforward. You may need to buy a T-piece for your brake lines so you can join the two back brakes together and run them as a single line. But the most straightforward way is just to run a new line straight from the brake master cylinder, straight through the transmission tunnel, and out through the brake bias valve, through then to a T-piece and out to each rear wheel. You might be able to scavenge the factory brake lines off the car, or it might be easier to just get some new ones made for where you need those new back lines to go. And obviously, of course, with a rally car, putting those lines inside the car gives them more protection. Here's the factory Honda setup, a dual circuit master cylinder with two equal volume outputs that goes across to a block. A lot of people think that this is a proportioning valve, and it's not. It's really just two Y pieces or T pieces joined together. There is a fail-safe system in there, but it's only got minor effect. There's no proportioning system there. It's just like a T-piece. And so what I'll do as far as the front brakes are concerned is, instead of one of those lines being the front brake and one is the back, I'll reconnect it so they're both on the same T-piece. But in the case of the rear brakes, I'll run a single line direct from the master cylinder, which will go down and through the firewall, and it'll go straight out the transmission tunnel, parallel with the battery cable, and we'll put the adjuster next to the driver. Then the line will go from there out to the back and split into a T-piece and go to both rear wheels. When you're going to undo brake lines, whatever you do, don't use an open-ended spanner, or God forbid ever a shifter, because what will happen is, if there's much resistance, that'll strip it, the nut, and you won't be able to get it on it. That spanner's fairly narrow and doesn't give you a lot of grip, but if you get the right tool, which this is, you can see how much thicker that is than the standard spanner. It's specifically designed for brake lines. And remember the red line mantra, number one, if you need a tool to save yourself money, go and buy it. So go and buy yourself a set of these. This will go right over the line. Bingo, no problems at all. You'll never strip a brake line with the proper tool. There's the original two rear brake lines. I'll just cut those. The front brake line on the near side used to go up over here. I've routed it down the bottom. Front near side wheel comes over to there. You can see I'm only using the top half of that junction box now. There's the other front wheel, and the line from the master cylinder. The rear line comes straight out of the master cylinder and goes out through the middle. Here is a Willwood brake bias adjuster. You can get them online for about $80 Australian. So here, by way of completed example, although a dusty one because it is my dirt car, is the braking setup on my muscle hatch. So the brake line for the rear brakes comes from the firewall, goes to the proportioning valve, which I can easily adjust even from the driver's seat, and then that line goes out up to the back to a T-piece and out to either rear wheel. That's a fairly straightforward thing to do. Well worth the trouble, let me tell you. The other significant way to upgrade your brakes, and particularly to give them greater longevity, like you'll use on a rally or a circuit, where the main thing you want is not so much more brake stopping power, but you don't want the brakes burning out, is to upgrade the front discs to a larger size. And the way you do this is you look at the brand of car you've got, and you look at the larger cars in that brand or family. So with a Golf, you'd be looking at Passats and Borers and cars like that. With Hondas, you'd be going from Civic brakes to an Accord, and so forth. So look at your car brand, see what's larger around, and sometimes you have to change the hubs to do it. If you get an easy swap, and most of the brake swaps I've done on the front have turned out to be easy. Sometimes you can literally just bolt the parts straight on and put the bigger discs on. If the stud pattern is different, sometimes you have to get them re-drilled. That's a job for a professional machining shop. You can't do that yourself at home. So for example, I'm running Accord 5 stud brakes on the front of my muscle hatch, and I had to have those discs remachined with the holes drilled to a 4 stud pattern. So you might have to do the same with a Golf. The other thing you might have to do with a front disc upgrade is to go to a larger wheel. And if you're running on the dirt, it probably makes sense to make sure the car's running on 15-inch wheels anyway, because that's the most common size that rally guys use. You can get second-hand tyres fairly easily in a 15-inch size. That's all stuff you can do later on. I'd do the brake bias adjusting first, leave all the braking system alone. That way you'll get it all set up and handling properly and stopping in a straight line. And then for the second upgrade, look for going to larger discs, bigger discs, ventilated discs and so forth.